Well, welcome back. This is the November 24th broadcast of Writing on the Air. Today's guest is children's book author Russell Daniel to discuss his book, These Are the Good Old Days. Please be aware that self-harm and suicide will be covered during our discussion. Welcome, Daniel. Let me share a little bit about your background with our listeners. Russell Daniel lives in Austin, Texas, with his adopted dog, Pia. Russell writes books for children and families that share a universal message. After the passing of his brother, Danny, the concept of these are the good old days became a powerful and present idea in his life. Welcome, Russell.
Thank you, Mindy.
So glad to have you here. We met at the Texas Book Festival.
Yes, that was great.
Which was a great experience. Is there anything else about your background that you want to share before we get into the discussion of the book itself?
Let's see. Background-wise, born and raised Texan from San Antonio. Been in Austin for the past 13 years. Nice. Love cycling around town, going to Barton Springs, playing with my dog Pia, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it was great to meet you at the Texas Book Festival. I've been going to that for many, many years.
Oh yeah, me too. It's a wonderful Austin event.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really taken by your book when I saw it there. One of the things that you say is, or your philosophy is, how much richer and fuller can we make the present moment by living with this perspective? These are the good old days. Mm-hmm. Explain what you mean by that.
Absolutely. So, of course, the more commonly used phrase is, those were the good old days.
Yeah,
so,
like the song.
Yeah. So often we're looking back and saying, those were the good old days, or even people just always looking forward and only saying, it will be great when I do X, Y, Z, these things happen for me. And so often we miss the moment that we're in, and we don't look around and realize that, you know what, at some point we're going to look back on this current time in our life and say, those were the good old days, and we're in them right now. So why not realize that in this current moment to say, these are the good old days, we're in them right now, we are in the time that we'll someday look back on. So let's appreciate the moment while we're in it.
So it's kind of like a living in the now type of way of approaching,
mm-hmm.
but not denying that we're going to have memories and we're going to have things that we want to look back on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm inherently a very nostalgic person. Love taking photos and videos and looking at photos. And of course, on our phone, it reminds us what you were doing 15 years ago with the pictures of it. So
and I think the illustrations in your book are also have a very nostalgic feel.
Mm-hmm.
Was my sense of them.
Yes. So speaking to the illustrations, I worked with Sandra McDougall. Shout out Sandra. She's a Austin-based illustrator. I met her through the Austin studio tour, probably about 5 years ago. Well before I started working on the book.
Right.
And then there was about probably 6 months where I was looking to find an illustrator and going through Instagram and just Google searching, just all the places to try to find someone, and had some good conversations, but was never able to finalize working with someone. And then, it sounds very cliche, but I was sitting down at my kitchen table one day, just thinking, I've looked at all the places that I could, and then I was sitting at the table, looked up on my wall, and right there were 3 of Sandra's pieces that I bought 4 years ago, and I was like, oh, of course,
right in front
Sandra.
of me.
Why didn't I think of that a long time ago?
Yeah.
So then I immediately messaged her and gave her, the short version of what I was working on, and then we had a phone call, and then over the course of several months and very long documents of this is what I have in my head, and we were able to bring to life the finished book.
Yeah. It's a beautiful book in both words and pictures.
Thank you.
So you wrote this book in honor of your brother, Daniel. Why was it important to you to preserve his memory in a children's book?
Well, as I guess to start as why the book in general as a children's book, I really like the idea that as a young person, as a kid is starting to make sense of the world, and even for parents, but especially for children, if I can be a small part of someone growing up with that message of these are the good old days. And that, I have friends, I actually don't have any children of my own, but friends with kids who have bought the book themselves. They were saying, yeah, we read it to our son earlier in the evening, and then later that night, we heard him upstairs by himself just say, these are the good old days. And so just that opportunity for someone to grow up.
Yeah.
And even just at my dream, and hopefully it's happened, I don't really know, but if a kid has the book read to them earlier in the week, and then the next day at dinner, they just look around the dinner table and say, these are the good old days. Like that's
there it is. It's perfect.
Yeah. And then as far as, memorializing and honor Danny's life, I'm honored anytime I get to talk about the book. Like at the Texas Book Festival, I got to say my brother Danny, and not every time when I'm talking about the book as someone who's walking by the table will I talk about that his death or the manner in which he passed, which you've already mentioned, self-harm and suicide. So he took his own life in August of 2020, kind of in the depth or the despair and the lonely periods of COVID, of course, August of 2020. And he took the isolation very, very seriously. So being able to tell people about my brother Danny and just like honor his life in a continual basis is something I've been really honored to be able to do.
Which I think is so important because isolation, going through the isolation at that time really hasn't been discussed that much, and people are still feeling it. And, I know people who had children or had children that were toddlers during that time, and their ability to socialize is so difficult for these young kids because they were, really kept in the womb for, 18 months longer than,
Yeah, I think it's, at least personally, that those periods of like not leaving the house for a week, like I've kind of repressed all that actual memory because in the middle of it, it was like, oh my God, when is this ever going to end? And it was a very tough time for a lot of people, and some people, of course, didn't survive it. Which
also brings the point, as much as we want to honor and celebrate the moment, these are the good old days, sometimes the good old days aren't good, and we have to be able to process that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's an arc of the book that I'm really proud of and happy with the way it turned out. About 3/4 of the way in the book. I guess I haven't even really talked about the book yet, but can go there. So 3/4 of the way through the book, Grandpa Dan, which the two main characters are Danny and Grandpa Dan. So the story starts out with Danny being a young boy. The first full spread of the book, because it's a 32-page children's picture book. So the first full spread is Danny and Grandpa Dan going for a walk in the woods together, which is something that I used to do with Grandpa Dan. He has a little bit of property outside of San Antonio, kind of towards Kerrville, that sort of area. So the story starts with them going for a walk in the woods together. Danny's a young boy. Grandpa Dan is, already a grandfather. And then so 3/4 of the way through the book, to your point of not every moment is great. And that's also how life is. So Grandpa Dan in the story, Grandpa Dan is getting older. One day, Grandpa Dan goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him that he's too old to go on adventures with Danny. Danny thinks that the good old days are over, but he remembers he still has Grandma Sally, his brothers, and his parents to go on adventures with, and the best thing he can do is continue believing these are still the good old days. So when I do school readings at elementary schools in Austin, San Antonio as well, I make sure to call out that part that, life is always changing. Sometimes we like the changes and they're good. Sometimes we don't like the changes. And acknowledging that that's part of life and we can still recognize the good things and the positive elements in our life, and
Right.
that it's still the good old days.
Right. Well, one of the things I also noticed about your book is that you have a study guide that gives tips on living in the moment. What are some of your recommendations that you, when you do these school visits, that you share with the students, teachers, parents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things so in the school readings that I do, the book itself is only about a 7 to 8 minute read, 700 and so words. So, but the readings that I do are 30 minutes long. So I have a lot of opportunity for like talking about the book and asking them, all right, if you have, what does the good old days mean to you? And how do you like to spend time with your friends and family? So I would say for children and even for adults, but for children, identifying people in your life and the things that you like to do with them that we often just take for granted. So for me, maybe that's riding bikes with friends or going to Barton Springs, and rather than just like, oh yeah, no, this is just what I do. It's like, no, this is something really special. And I feel thankful that I have a bicycle, and we live in Austin, Texas with good bike lanes and good bike infrastructure.
Right.
So just having that mindfulness and realizing what you do have, because too often in life, we always focus on what we don't have, and that can be an endless.
That's so interesting, and also the element being open to the element of surprise. I went out to walk my Chihuahua this morning. She's a very feisty little gal, and we just live in a normal, Austin development, and we were walking, and in my neighbor's yard, 2 houses down, were 2 deer in their yard, looking for water, looking for food or whatnot. And of course, my Chihuahua felt that she had to protect me from these big. But just that surprise, just that moment of seeing something that you don't normally see is...
Yeah, because that's most of what life is just the little moments along the way. Yeah, sometimes they're punctuated by, graduation and birthdays and weddings, but those are the moments that don't happen every day. The moments that do happen every day are taking your dog for a walk and maybe see some deer along the way, or you pass a neighbor and you'll have a nice conversation and just like, you know what, that sense of community can be one of those surprises too.
Important things to remember. If you are just joining us, this is Writing on the Air on KOOP Radio. Our guest is author Russell Daniel, talking about his children's book, These Are the Good Old Days. We're going to pause for some announcements, and then we'll have some more discussion.
Hi, I'm Tim Hertenberger.
And I'm the other guy, Lewis Harrison.
We're inviting you to take a weekly trip to the land of rhythm and pleasure, the home of the great American songbook, plus the country, blues, and jazz of Western swing.
The great music, the great performers, ranging from Tin Pan Alley to the honky-tonks of Texas.
The land of rhythm and pleasure, Thursday mornings from 9 to 11 here on KOOP.
This land is your land.
If you are just joining us, this is Writing on the Air on KOOP Radio. Our guest is author Russell Daniel, talking about his children's book, These Are the Good Old Days, which is kind of geared from kindergarten to 5th grade. Is that kind of what you had in mind when you wrote the book?
I would say so. In kindergarten, as a child is starting to learn to read and they're reading their first books, but I also have friends that have they have the book as the book that they're reading to their newborn as something to rock them to sleep. So, and actually for my life, a big book that my mom used to read to us as a children's book, if you remember, Love You Forever,
yes,
Robert Munch, I believe.
Yeah.
So similar kind of age range. Maybe as a newborn, before they can even read, a parent reading it to their child, and then pre-K or kinder through 4th is the grades that I read for at AISD schools or schools around Central Texas. So yeah, kind of in that age range.
Which is really important. We were talking about the study guide and the tips that you give in your book, which you've made available on your website. These Are the Good Old Days book, So people can find more information about that. Let's get back to talking a little bit about the impact on children and what you were just talking about. Why should parents and teachers and even children focus on mental health early, do you think?
That's a good question. Let's see. That's a question I haven't had before. So,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
I do like it. I can definitely think of something. So, as with at least traditional education, it's all about the math and science and reading. Obviously, all that's very important, but we don't know how to, let's say, like process our thoughts and know that, all right, I can have this thing in my head. And I'm not a psychologist by any means of background, but like cognitive behavioral therapy, like learning how to think about your own thoughts. And like, oh, okay, and actually I remember when I kind of first became aware of like, all right, I've always heard of anxiety and being anxious, and maybe outside of like the clinical definition of anxiety disorder, that sort of thing. But I remember when it's like, oh, this feeling in my head or right here, I'm feeling anxious.
Yeah.
And that's what that is. And so just being able to identify what something is kind of makes it less scary because there's a word for it. And it's like, oh, this is a thing that a lot of people have from time to time. And now that I know what it is, I can process it a little bit easier. So I think just having children and anyone know that, all right, there are certain feelings and emotions that come with life, anxiety and depression even.
Right.
And especially as we go into the holidays, I was really happy to be here today with you during this time because the holidays aren't always happy times for everyone. If they particularly maybe lost a family member recently or just their life doesn't have people around that they can celebrate holidays with, it can be a really hard time.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I had for you is with Thanksgiving this week and the holidays coming up in a few weeks. I think that, there's, the concept of tradition certainly ties into what you're writing, and these are the good old days. The tradition of Danny taking a walk with his grandpa and how it felt to lose that tradition, but also the opportunity to start traditions. As you said, this book is a children's book, so it's short. It's something that you could read at the Thanksgiving table, and you could ask those questions around the table, kind of like how we and what are you thankful for? So I think what you've done with this book really ties into the ability to do that, to take something and make it, helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one of the repeated 4-line phrase that structurally I took a lot of the kind of the framework that I liked from Love You Forever, how Love You Forever has that repeated 4-line phrase of, I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. So for my book, it's, these are the good old days when we're all still around and you're right here safe and sound. I know that these are the good old days. So Thanksgiving coming up, if, earlier this year, I lost my Grandma Sally, who was married to Grandpa Dan in real life, Grandpa Dan obviously being the character in the book. And so, this will be our first Thanksgiving and first holidays without Grandma Sally. And I obviously can remember previous Thanksgivings where Grandma Sally was at the table. Yeah. And so, that line of that repeated phrase of when we're all still around, the reality is that that's not always going to be true. And, whether it's a grandparent passing or even a parent or a sibling passing, just again, realizing, I do have these people in my life right now, and I really want to be thankful and recognize that they are here because they won't always be here. So I think that's a big part of it.
It is a big part of it. And I wanted to also ask you about the name you write under. You write as Russell Daniel, and I'm guessing the Daniel part is for your brother.
So that is my pen name. My middle name is Daniel. So yes, Grandpa Dan, I think the name Daniel started with him. I'll have to ask my mom or Grandpa Dan. So yeah, Grandpa Dan, and then I have an uncle, Uncle Danny, and then my middle name is Daniel. My brother's Danny. So for the book, like in everyday life, my name is Russell Daniel Garcia. But for the book, I was like, you know what? I really like Russell Daniel. Has an honor to Grandpa Dan and my brother Danny. And then I think it also just looks nice on the cover of the book.
It really does. Yeah, it really resonates. So do you write under your own name as well, or
not in any real capacity?
Yeah.
I have, a few posts on Medium, which actually I wrote about my brother's passing on a Medium post. If you're familiar with Medium, kind of the blogging platform, which is linked from my website if people are interested in reading a very raw account of Danny's passing and kind of the things that we feel like in hindsight, like he talked about, and this is all in my Medium post, about not getting good sleep and how that can be an indicator, and things that we never knew to look for at the time because Danny really hid his personal anguish to hid it from us and kept it to himself. So in that Medium post, I write there under my real name, not my real name, but my regular everyday name. So yeah, I do a little bit of writing, but not in a children's book sense.
And do you plan on writing either more children's books or other books? What are some of the next things you're looking forward to doing?
Yep. So children's book wise, I already have a concept for book number 2. And actually on the final page of These Are the Good Old Days, the final page just says, "I'm glad you're here." And so that would be the title for the next book.
Nice.
And I kind of want to do that for every book that I write, is do a little teaser on the final page for the next book. So the concept for I'm Glad You're Here will be, still a 32-page children's picture book, but on every page would be the full spread. And so on the left side page, it would be some setup of some premise. And then on the right side of the page, just simply, I'm glad you're here. So as an example being, maybe the opening page is kind of the easiest for me to visualize, and I can talk more about others, but a mother or a parent bringing their newborn into the world, and maybe there's that first person dialogue where the mother is talking to their baby, or it's just kind of a narrator describing that scene, the mother holding their baby with all the care and excitement for their own adventures ahead. The mother said, "I'm glad you're here."
Yeah.
As another example, maybe 2 older friends, let's say just two guy friends, 2 buddies are talking to each other, and maybe one is describing "Oh man, I'm having a really hard time," and just while still keeping it a children's book, but describing some type of I need a friend right now. And then on the right side of the page just says, again, I'm glad you're here. So every page, left side setup, premise, describing that scenario, and then the right side just, I'm glad you're here. Because I think it's something that some people might not hear that message of I'm glad you're here.
Right.
And whether it can be kind of a just somewhat superficial, hey, I'm glad you're here. Or it can be something really deep and meaningful, to the core. I'm glad you're here. Everything that you've gone through, you've survived, and you're still here. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it can be like a mantra. Mm-hmm. So I'm really fascinated. Did you plan on being a children's book author? How or is it just something that came to you?
Mostly just something that came to me. So of course, Danny passed in August of 2020. Being a children's book author was nowhere on my radar during that time. And then I started working on the book in the middle of 2023. And at first I was like, well, I don't really know what this would turn into. I don't even make videos, but there was a time when I was like, oh, I could be a video producer. Yeah. I was like, well, maybe it's a little short video. And then eventually I was like, no, I think this could be a children's book. And then so kind of since that time of middle of 2023, I've been working on the book, and then it was These Are the Good Old Days was published in April of this year, actually on April 27th, which is Grandpa Dan's birthday. So I timed it such that the release of the book was on his 94th birthday,
Wow.
April 27th.
So he's still with us.
He is, yes.
Grandpa
Still lives in San Antonio.
Yeah, and what was your family's reaction to you sharing this kind of intimacy in a book that others would read?
Yeah, I've been really proud of and I don't know what another word, but I guess just proud of my parents in particular, that, suicide and self-harm can be it is a really sensitive and charged topic. And, some families, of course, it's their choice how they choose to approach it in a public manner, or kind of not talk about what happened to the person who they lost. But my parents have always encouraged and been open to talking about it, because if we can somehow at least a little bit reduce the stigma of not talking about, oh, I'm feeling really bad and I'm having these dark thoughts. If people continue to not feel like they can talk about it, then it's harder for them to process it. So from that sense of Danny and his passing, my parents have been just really honored that they've done it that way.
And I imagine also that it allows them to maybe release the stigma that parents have when a child, does take their life, and I'm sure they are concerned about what people are going to think of them. What what did they do or fail to do, or So by putting it out there, it really allows families who have experienced this to know it's okay to share it.
Yeah. And then as far as the book, they just love the story, and I've been really happy that when I do share the book with people, and like at the Texas Book Festival, hundreds of people per day walking by the table, and I give them the short pitch, which I actually don't get into, Danny's passing and all that, just in that short pitch, because I would feel like if I just gloss over it, that it doesn't do it justice about the impact that his passing has had in my life. So I just mention, the story follows my younger brother Danny and my 94-year-old grandfather, Grandpa Dan, who still lives in San Antonio, and then get into the actual story. But even when I do tell them about it in that short pitch, like I've had some people just say, all right, that's enough. I'll get the book. I'm going to start bawling here right now.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you. I appreciate the book so much.